Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to APTN National News. I'm Rick Harp. Tonight's broadcast returns to the trial of the man accused in the murder of Tina Fontaine. APTN's Holly Moore was at the Winnipeg courthouse. She files this report.
It's day 8 in the trial for the murder of Tina Fontaine. And today, court heard from social workers and even an ER doctor who had contact with the young woman in the days before she was found dead. Dr. Andrea Wilkie-Gilmore examined Fontaine at Winnipeg's Children's Hospital Emergency. She had been picked up by the Winnipeg paramedics early in the morning of August 8th. Gilmore told the court she was concerned that Fontaine had been sexually exploited. Tina was eventually taken to the Best Western Hotel by Southeast CFS worker Kimberly Shute. And another woman took over that night. And both social workers say they asked her not to go out that night, though she had wanted to go to nearby Portage Place with her friends. Sergeant Shauna Neufeld from the Winnipeg Police Service Missing Persons Unit told court Fontaine had been reported missing several times in the month preceding her murder. She said, "She was new on our radar. We didn't know that much about her." On August 17th, the homicide unit took over. Court also heard from Sergeant Wade McDonald, who was one of 2 officers who interrogated Cormier. Court was also shown a video that shows Raymond Cormier saying, "Don't focus on me as the guy who did this. I didn't do it." Holly Moore, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Some northern BC families will now get a chance to sit with the National Inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women later this month. Closed to the public, the meeting will be reserved for Casca families who feel they were left out of previous hearings. Hailing from Good Hope Lake, Watson Lake, and Lower Post, family members will share their stories to the inquiry through private statements. The move will address their not being able to testify at either last May's hearings in Whitehorse, Yukon, or in Smithers, BC in September.
Lower Post and Good Hope Lake got left out when the inquiry was in Whitehorse. And the families were calling us, and we got direction from the inquiry at that time that said, then they said that there was going to be a Northern BC event. But then an event did happen in Smithers in September, and I made calls to see, okay, are the families going to go down there? And we were told, no, that wasn't for them. So we wrote a letter to the commissioner expressing our concerns.
If you'd like to share your thoughts about this or any other story you see on the broadcast, here's how to get in touch. Send an email to news@aptn.ca, like our APTN National News Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter at APTN News, or go to our website, aptnnews.ca. A delegation of human rights defenders from Mexico are on a Canadian tour this week. They're here to address the social and environmental impacts of Canadian mining companies in Mexico. Danielle Rochette reports.
Mariano Abarca was killed in 2009 in Chiapas, Mexico. He was a key leader in his community's fight against Canadian mining company Blackfire Exploration. Abarca fought to defend the impacts of mining on the environment and human rights. 8 years after his father's death, José Luis Abarca joined this delegation and wants justice for his father.
El punto más importante de este viaje fue haber hecho una demanda al comisionado integral para la Administración Pública de Canadá, donde solicitamos intervenga e investigue a la embajada canadiense, toda vez que esta embajada canadiense se involucró en la relación con la empresa minera canadiense.
Monday in Ottawa, the delegation filed a complaint with Canada's Public Sector Integrity Commissioner requesting an investigation. Miguel Angel de los Santos, the Abarca family's lawyer, helped file the complaint.
Realizó múltiples gestiones de apoyo para que la empresa minera pudiera trabajar sin ningún obstáculo. De manera que esa actividad de apoyo, incluso de intervención muy comprometida por parte de la misión diplomática, aumentó el riesgo para la seguridad y la vida de Mariano Abarca.
Mining Watch Canada endorsed the complaint to the Public Sector Commissioner. Jen Moore is the Latin America Program Coordinator for Mining Watch Canada.
This is part of to look for justice and to stop the impunity with which companies are responsible for all sorts of harms that are taking place, that are externalized onto the communities, be that health harms, environmental damage, or the sorts of violence and repression that we also see accompanying many projects. And this happens in part because there is no accountability for what's going on.
The first measure will be to analyze the matter.
The Office of the Public Sector Integrity Commissioner of Canada will decide if an investigation will be launched and says that decision should be made within 90 days. Daniel Rochette, APTN National News, Montreal.
Time for a break. When we return, we'll hear about the Senate Committee on Human Rights as they look into the rights of federal prisoners. Please stay tuned. Mostly cloudy and 0 in St. John's, a snowy -6 in Fredericton. In Ukchuak, snowy -26, Nain, a sunny -24. Saguenay, -11, mostly cloudy, -11 Gaspé, snow. Ottawa, snowy -9, Sault Ste. Marie, mostly cloudy, -9. Big Trout Lake, partly cloudy, -21, Sudbury, partly cloudy, -10. Churchill, sunny, -31. The Pas, sunny, -18. Barons River, snow, -18. Winnipeg, sunny, -16. Yorkton, -19 and sun. North Battleford, the same. Stony Rapids, sun and -22. Meadow Lake, -18 and sunny. And welcome back. It was a year ago that the Senate Committee on Human Rights launched its study on federal prisoners, and today in Ottawa, those meetings resumed. Here's Annette Francis with more.
The meeting opened up with a brief statement by the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, Daniel Therrien. He says the privacy rights of federal inmates must be balanced with the government's objective, ensuring public safety.
The sensitivity of medical and mental health information. We support a principle of minimal disclosure to limit sharing to only that which is necessary and proportionate, while also recognizing that there may be a need for the Parole Board of Canada or other bodies to have access to certain information relevant to release decision-making or the supervision or surveillance of an offender.
But when it comes to federal inmates having access to their own information, there are many complaints.
We accepted roughly 400, so 397 complaints related to the Correctional Service of Canada. And the vast majority of these complaints related to denial of access issues. So it's important in the context of complaints made by inmates.
Therrien says the current backlog faced by CSC is long, up to 2 years. But according to Senator Kim Pate, it's even longer.
So would it surprise you to hear that there are some most prisoners abandon those complaints, and many non-governmental organizations acting on behalf of prisoners abandon those complaints. They're sometimes 5-6 years.
It came as no surprise to Commissioner Therrien. He says delays throughout the system are a problem. Anna Francis, APTN National News, Ottawa.
Despite many promises and a positive tone, when it comes to Indigenous issues, Canada still has a lot of work to do. That, according to a new report from Amnesty International. Alex Neve is Amnesty's Secretary General for Canada. He joins me from Ottawa. So, Mr. Neve, Amnesty has been looking at these issues for a long time. Can you tell us overall how Canada is doing in 2018 with regard to Indigenous rights?
Well, this report that we've put out, which is both a report card looking back at 2017 and a new agenda of recommendations looking ahead to 2018, covers 7 broad themes, both domestic and international when it comes to human rights, Indigenous rights being one of the very important chapters. And I think it would be safe to say that it is the area where we've seen the least progress, where we're expressing the most serious levels of disappointment, and where what we've really noted is that while absolutely we've certainly seen a very important change of tone with the Trudeau government, a lot of talk of commitment to Indigenous rights, a lot of stirring and aspirational promises and speeches being made, some grand gestures. When it comes to real change, when it comes to tough decisions, that's where we're seeing a real gap.
So how does that sense of disappointment factor in when it comes specifically to the matter of the implementation of UNDRIP, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, which you gave an amber grade to Canada for, I believe?
That's right. So in our 4-color grading scheme, that's actually the second highest, and it's the highest mark we gave with respect to any of the 7 recommendations from 2017 that we were assessing. And that really only changed towards the latter part of the year, because this is something that the government has been talking about for quite some time at the United Nations, in the House of Commons, in media statements, that Canada now fully embraces and endorses without reservation the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but has been stalling and has been very unclear as to what that means in terms of implementation. So probably for much of the year, we would have been prepared to give a red or an orange grade here. It was only towards the end of the year when the government finally announced that they were prepared now to support NDP MP Romeo Saganash's private members bill, Bill C-262, regarding an implementation framework for the declaration, that we upped it to an amber grade. And now we're watching very closely in the early part of 2018 to make sure that there's follow-through.
But, I mean, to seize on that word follow-through, we've yet to actually see what the follow-through on that UNDRIP commitment is.
That's right. And how will they engage in the debate with respect to Bill C-262, which is underway right now? That bill will soon be in front of a parliamentary committee. There's already talk, including from Romeo Saganash himself, about efforts to maybe even have Bill C-262 strengthened and improved. Will the government support that? There's a lot of questions here, but at least for the first time, we're seeing some promise that this is finally going to get underway.
And lastly, there is some reference to the question of emergency access to shelters and transition homes for Indigenous women. Where would you say the area of greatest need is with regard to that in particular?
This is a very important area because, of course, we do have the national inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls underway right now. It's been facing challenges, as we all know. But at the same time, the government has always made it clear that just because the inquiry is underway doesn't mean that they're going to wait to take action on the things that we know are already urgent needs. And certainly the fact that there is a paucity, a real lack of emergency shelters for Indigenous women and girls throughout First Nations communities across the country, certainly for Inuit women across the north, is an ongoing concern. It's been well documented. We've been calling on Canada to address this, and we're still not seeing progress. In the federal budget in 2016, new money was allocated here, which should lead to the establishment of 5 new shelters, but we need construction and establishment of shelters well beyond that.
Mr. Neve, thank you.
Thanks for your interest.
Métis and non-status people were left out of the proposed $800 million settlement for 60 Scoop survivors. But the former president of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan is now taking matters into his own hands. Robert Doucet is suing the federal and Saskatchewan governments over the 60 Scoop, and he'll join host Dennis Ward on today's In Focus to talk about just that.
This isn't an easy topic to deal with, but why doesn't Canada and Saskatchewan just, work together, come out together with a joint statement, all the provinces, and and really make this a reconciliation moment, you know. But no, they have to divide and conquer people again. And as a result of that, you see some of the emails people telling us to get our act together. And you know, Harry Daniels actually showed us the way. When you look at what really happens at a community level when something happens is when a community leader with a community-based support actually says enough is enough. And that's what Harry Daniels has done. And that's what we're doing now. And we're saying that, look at, you know, thank you, David Chartrand, for your words. In Saskatchewan, we didn't hear nothing from the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan. We waited for it. We wanted it. We didn't hear nothing. So you know what? I finally said enough was enough. Our Métis people are suffering in Saskatchewan. They're making us fight over money. And so, you know, the only time, again, as I've repeated to this, Métis 60 Scoop survivors, First Nations and Inuit, we will deal with our own issues. We have done the heavy lifting, and we're going to continue moving forward with our agenda. And Minister Bennett and Premier Moe of Saskatchewan should get ready, because we have the determination, the motivation, and the education to deal with this issue, and we're not going to stop until we see two words: justice and respect.
You know, the government owes me an apology because I didn't get to grow up around my cookum, my aunties, my uncle. The government owes my daughter an apology because she has a great-grandmother that she doesn't get to spend nearly enough time with. And that's really saddening, actually, that, you know, the government is going to have to apologize for the things that are happening today and for the things that have happened already. So yes, they will owe an apology to our families.
And there again, that was a clip from APTN in Focus, which aired today at 2 o'clock Central. You can see the full show as a repeat tomorrow at 11 p.m. Central. Meanwhile, it's time for another pause when APTN National News comes back, looking back at the year that was in New Zealand. Please stay tuned. Sunny, -21 in Fort Chipewyan. Clouds and -17 in Grand Prairie. Calgary, snow -14. Medicine Hat -11 and snow. Tofino, 9 and rain. Kamloops, cloudy and 4. Fort Nelson, -18, mostly cloudy. Cloudy and 7 in Prince Rupert. Mayo, a sunny -32. Beaver Creek, a cloudy -29. Yellowknife, -22 and sun. Same in Norman Wells. Colville Lake, -26 and sun. -22 in sun in Sachs Harbor. River Falls Bay, -36 in sun. Cambridge Bay, -26 in sun. Clyde River, mix of sun and cloud, -31. Resolute, a sunny, -31. And thanks for staying with us. We begin this part of the broadcast with a story from one of our partners at the World Indigenous Television Broadcasters Network. Recently, Maori TV asked folks in South Auckland, New Zealand for their lowlights and highlights of the year. Here's what they heard.
Born and bred in Otallakola, yeah. Beautiful place to be. Gateway to South Auckland. I never had a mother or a father. Back in those days, it was just the gangs, so they were our role models. All we had was gangs and hanging out with brothers in the area here. Yeah, that was my upbringing here. For me, I'm a family man now. It's actually helped me to realise and become a better father, to understand what a parent is. Like I say, I've never had one, but there's nothing against my parents. It's just the way it was back then.
You ask anyone in the streets what's important to them and what makes them happy, they all say family. On May the 1st, my little sister passed away of suicide. My best friend. She was fun, very exciting, adventurous. We used to always go on adventures. It's kind of hard when you lose your best friend because you tend to try and find them in everyone you meet. I miss you. And I know I couldn't have done anything to change anything, but I'm going to make you proud. And it hurts me to see families and people hurt. So why not try and change it? I'm only 21, but if I can do something, then cool. I'm doing something for my people. It starts with us, change.
I didn't have a job. I was struggling to make ends meet. I was resorting to crime to live, and I just had enough of that life. And I thought, no, I've got to change, and I've got to give my kids a better future. Losing my mum recently in August was really the main trigger that made me want to change, because I've got to be the mother that I always had, and I want to do that for my children. I was her main carer for the last 20 years. So we've had a special bond, and it's very difficult for me not having her in my life. After my mum died, Housing New Zealand had tried to evict us from our whānau homestead of 53 years, and thanks to the good support and advocacy from all the Māori advocates out there, we now have my niece staying in there with all the grandchildren.
South Auckland is the best. People worry to stay in Otara. Myself, I love Otara. I've been living in Otara, local here.
So what's the best thing for you this year?
Probably school. I made it for another year of school.
Jacinda is an inspiration to me. The new government, I have so much hope for them, and they have good intentions for our people and our country. She's so right. If our youth are right, our streets will be good. Our families will be good. Like, you know, we mentally got to look after, and physically look after our youth.
And just before we go, it was quite the discovery in Great Britain. You're looking at an image of a face reconstructed using DNA taken from bone powder. Said to be from the oldest skeleton found in the British Isles, the remains were discovered in the Cheddar Gorge, some 150 miles west of London. And according to DNA analysis, scientists believe these remains are of a man who lived 10,000 years ago who had dark brown skin and blue eyes. Scientists say that shows that lighter skin of so-called modern Europeans is actually a relatively recent phenomenon. Well, that's it for APTN National News. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for more news making headlines in Indigenous country. And for news 24/7, go to aptnnews.ca. I'm Rick Harp. Have a good night, everyone.